So why was Israel's Defense Minister Ehud Barak and the rest of the defense establishment not open to this kind of thinking?
Because if you look at the leadership of Israel today, it was forged through military struggle and it was forged through anti-terrorist struggle. So they are still the outcome of a different arena. The arena that looked at military threats, at terrorist threats, and that got very good at responding to those threats. And it takes a while to understand that the arena has shifted. Also for Israel, it took a while to understand that classic wars have ended and now it's terrorism. It took us a few decades to find the proper response to international and domestic terrorism, to build an export-based economy. So these mental changes actually take time, because once you create those mental structures, it's very hard for you to shift. When I talk about an intellectual attack, it sounds fluffy. It sounds, I mean, for a man who went through the military, this is not a serious attack. What's an intellectual attack?
In your opinion, how is Israel faring in this war of words? Do you think, for example, that Israel gets a fair hearing in the international media?
There's no doubt that whatever happens here gets disproportional attention to anything that happens anywhere else. What I do find that the main problem here is that people rush to judgment. And there's no appreciation for the complexity of the situation, for the complexity of the conflict. And I think, if anything, we should insist on the complexity of things so that people would understand that it's not so simple to rush to judgment in this situation. It's not so simple to decide who's in the right. And I think this is what Israel should really Israel should fight for and battle for. Not that we're right, they're wrong. I don't think that's the way to go, but just to insist that the situation is far more complex than might appear in the first few minutes of watching a video.
The findings of an internal Israeli military probe have been published, and they found that there were problems with the operation, the planning, the execution. But the findings did not actually put the blame on anyone. What kind of value do you think a probe like this has?
This is within the box. No one comes up and says, just a moment, the whole thinking should have been different. The whole thinking should have been that this is not an arena where the military gets sent, because the military doesn't know how to deal with images, with ideas. So in that respect, it's not helpful to the kind of shift that I think Israel should make in order to truly win in this war of ideas.
You've written a book, My Israel, Our Generation. Do you think that the new generation of Israeli leadership, such as yourself, will take this kind of thinking on board?
Yes, certainly. I mean, my generation is the first generation that fought in the first Intifada. It was an Intifada that was marked very much by this battle of ideas and images. So I think we're much more aware of that. We're not aware of a history of military and wars. That's kind of in the books for us, and distant history. So yes, I think hopefully that is some of the change that could take place, but I hope it takes sooner than the time that is required for my generation to get to a position of leadership in the country.
Do you think we're now going to see flotilla after flotilla with the Israeli leadership dealing with it in the same way? So very much the same kind of reaction?
The desire to send ships came from what people perceived as this great success of the first one, right? Everyone wanted a piece of it. When babies in Gaza are named Erdogan, then, the Iranian president wants that too, and someone in Lebanon and Libya too. But once they see the media is no longer interested, it fizzles, it becomes pathetic, then also the interest to do so becomes lower.
Does this not mean that they'll look for more dramatic ways to get attention in the international arena? So in fact, the flotilla could be something small compared to what is going to come.
Well, I think what we also need to understand about this arena is that it's never going to be a one-off victory. Many people kind of told me, okay, we would have let it go, and then what? Always this question of, and then what? And I say, when we go to war, when we fight terrorism, when we build an economy, we don't say, and then what? We understand that this is going to be all the time, and we're going to have to overcome challenges all the time. As soon as we shift our understanding, we understand that this is the key arena where Israel and the Zionist idea is threatened today, then we constantly try to outwit and outsmart the other side. The other side is going to try to do the same to us, and we have to be smarter and better. But it's not going to disappear until ultimately 20, 30 years from now, as with all our other challenges and wars, the other side basically says, okay, they won.
Dr. Einat Wilf, thank you very much for joining us here on RT.
Sure. Thank you. My pleasure.